I got pregnant. I was the only virgin in art school. So I got caught out immediately, and so I had to create a smokescreen. The music was not of interest. This is a trick that fate, because I didn't know I had the gift. I hadn't started to write.
What if the painful truth behind a beloved artist's greatest songs stayed hidden for more than 40 years? How does someone transform unbearable loss into music cherished by millions? Joni Mitchell carried a secret that could have shattered her life, remaining silent until she finally revealed the truth at 82. Her journey is filled with heartbreak, resilience, and triumph. From a childhood marked by illness and secrecy to painful relationships, career struggles, and extraordinary artistic success. Now, uncover the personal tragedy behind Joni Mitchell's timeless songs and discover how she transformed her deepest wounds into music that still moves the world. The long-hidden heartbreak. For over 4 decades, Joni Mitchell carried a secret that shaped her life, but remained locked away from the public eye. What she went through in the mid-1960s was a tragedy so profound it could have shattered her career and crushed her spirit if revealed too soon. She could not even share it with her closest family or friends, choosing instead to bury her pain deep inside. But that pain seeped into her music, giving it a rawness and vulnerability millions connected with, often without knowing why. This private agony fueled songs like Both Sides Now, which became an anthem for heartbreak and reflection. Despite the song's popularity, the truth behind its inspiration remained hidden for decades, until Joni finally broke her silence in 1996. Her revelation shocked fans and critics alike, unveiling painful layers of loss and regret that had been woven into her lyrics. Yet, the most heartbreaking part of her story did not just lie in the past, but in what followed, as she tried to mend a fractured life. Joni's story begins with Roberta Joan Anderson, born in 1943 in Fort Macleod, Alberta, and quickly marked by instability and frequent moves due to her father's military career. As a child, Joni experienced a restlessness and sense of not belonging that would linger and find expression in her art. She battled polio at age 9, a brutal illness that left lasting physical challenges and taught her early on about suffering and resilience. This battle with polio became an invisible thread in her later music, echoing in themes of survival and struggle. Even as a young girl, Joni's spirit was unbreakable. At 9, while recovering from polio, she began smoking, a rebellious act that gave her a sense of control amid chaos. Despite this habit, her voice remained a powerful and unique instrument that would define her career. School was challenging, and she was more drawn to painting than academics, a passion she nurtured through art school. Her eye for color and detail shaped not only her visual art, but also the vivid imagery in her songwriting that would captivate listeners worldwide. At 17, she kinda dropped out of school and found herself tangled with people who lived on the margins of society. That darker chapter, even if it was risky, somehow made her understand life's messier complexities better, and it gave her music this extra emotional weight. Still, she managed to pull herself free from all that, and she chose music as the direction to walk into. But honestly, the years ahead would push at her strength in ways she hadn't really pictured. In 1964, in Calgary, when she was 19 and studying art, Joni was hit with a secret that would end up reshaping everything. She got pregnant, but the father, another student, offered little to nothing and gave her just a poem before he vanished. At a time when being a single mother was judged very harshly, Joni kept the pregnancy hidden from nearly everyone, even her own parents. The fear of disgrace was so loud inside her that when her daughter Kelly Dale Anderson was born, the whole birth felt like it had to be wrapped in secrecy. Joni just couldn't face the harsh realities of society, and with no real help, she made this really agonizing choice to give her daughter up for adoption. I mean, it tore her up inside, but it also looked like the only viable way forward, given everything. No father, no money, and a society that kind of punished unwed mothers. The loss stayed with her, quiet and private, for decades, even while the world saw her public success. Her friend Lori Wilson put it plain, saying it was like hell for Joni, a kind of grief so deep, yet somehow unspoken. And so, even if Joni couldn't really talk about it out loud, she turned that pain into art. Those early little performances in coffee shops, well, they gave her a place to pour out heartache into her songs, turning sorrow into strength. That direct, raw, emotional honesty is what separated her in the music world, and it also seemed to invite others, encourage other people to let their own vulnerabilities show. Oddly enough, the fact that she kept silent about her personal tragedy made the emotional effect of her work even sharper, like it created this stronger connection with the audience. Her early career was also shaped by crushing pressure, the kind that comes from trying to balance fast-growing fame with private torment. At 21, living in Toronto, she was building a folk singing career, and at the same time, carrying the weight of being an unwed mother with a newborn daughter kept hidden away. The fear and shame she endured were overwhelming, yet her resilience propelled her forward, laying the foundation for the legendary artist she would become. Childhood struggles and early influences. Joni Mitchell's life began amid upheaval and hardship, factors that deeply influenced her artistic voice. Born Roberta Joan Anderson, her family's constant moves across Canadian military bases meant she rarely found a place to call home. This sense of rootlessness fostered a lifelong yearning and shaped the themes of longing and identity woven through her songs. Her mother's role as a school teacher offered some stability, but Joni's perception was framed by change and adjustment. Her battle with polio at the age of 9 left more than physical scars. Spending weeks isolated in hospital away from family and friends, she endured pain that would resurface throughout her life as post-polio syndrome. The disease left her with a twisted back and chronic fatigue, shaping both her physical reality and emotional landscape. Joni's fight with polio taught her frailty, but also inner strength, qualities reflected in the poetic survival narratives that characterize many of her songs. While still recovering from polio, Joni's unexpected choice to begin smoking was an early act of rebellion and self-assertion. It symbolized taking control in a world where much felt uncertain, and her voice stayed remarkably intact despite the habit. This boldness and resilience carried through her childhood and adulthood, fueling her fierce independence as an artist. Academically, Joni struggled, finding little connection with traditional schooling, but excelling in painting. Seen first as a painter, she attended art school where her visual creativity flourished. This artistic foundation profoundly influenced her songwriting, which has often been compared to vivid paintings in lyrical form. Her albums were more than music. They were immersive art experiences where words and melodies painted emotions and stories. Dropping out of school in grade 12 sort of pushed Joni into this precarious phase, mixing with folks on the fringes of society. Later reflections made it clear she came dangerously close to turmoil, but at the same time she gathered these raw experiences and emotions that would later start feeding her songwriting. That stretch was dark, but it was still formative, like the lessons stayed kind of nearby, never really drifting far from her creative spirit. Through it all, she came back to music as a way forward, determined to say things that words and paint alone couldn't manage. Her restless spirit and the refusal to let hardship label her became kinda the backbone of her story. From the shadows of illness and instability, a voice emerged, a voice that seemed headed to shift folk and popular music. Joni's early life challenges, physical and emotional both, gave her work this strong authenticity, and listeners could feel it even before they could name it. While she grappled with pain and isolation, those formative years basically set the foundation for a career built on honesty and poetic insight. And her art school training, it blended smoothly with her musical growth, like two kinds of expression folded together into one singular visionary sound. The vivid imagery in her songs often replicates the colors and textures she saw in painting, so the whole thing feels distinctive, deeply personal, and not easily copied by anyone else. Joni Mitchell's early experiences with illness, family instability, and rebellion set the tone for both her personal life and her creative legacy. These struggles shaped her worldview and infused her music with a compelling mix of vulnerability and strength that would captivate generations. Early career and silent pain. As Joni Mitchell embarked on her musical career, an unbearable secret weighed heavily on her soul. Becoming pregnant at 19 and abandoned by the child's father thrust her into a position fraught with fear and isolation. The 1960s were an unforgiving time for unwed mothers, and societal judgment forced her to keep her pregnancy and birth tightly under wraps. Even her own parents were left in the dark about her newborn daughter, Kelly Dale Anderson. The shame and fear she endured were nearly suffocating. Facing motherhood alone, without financial support or social acceptance, Joni made the heart-rending decision to give her daughter up for adoption. This silent sacrifice was a source of profound grief, one that haunted her privately as her public career blossomed. The gap between her rising fame and private sorrow was stark and painful. Despite the secret she carried, Joni turned to music to heal and to express what she could not openly share. Performing in coffee shops, she channeled her loss and longing into songs that carried raw emotion and poetic depth. Her pain became a creative wellspring, setting her apart from other artists and laying the foundation for her lasting impact. Her style emerged as honest and courageous, encouraging others to embrace vulnerability in their music. The contrast between her private heartbreak and public success created a compelling tension that enriched her songs. Listeners might not have known her story, but they deeply felt the authenticity behind her voice. In 1965, Joni's life took another dramatic turn when she met Chuck Mitchell, a confident figure from the New York folk scene. Their relationship was intense and fast-moving, culminating in marriage just months after their first meeting. For Joni, this marriage held hope, a chance to reclaim a sense of stability and possibly reunite with her daughter. However, the promises that accompanied the marriage soon dissolved. Chuck focused on his career and neglected the commitment to help Joni regain custody of Kelly. The couple's relationship was strained further by emotional neglect and control, leaving Joni feeling trapped and diminished. Chuck's dismissal of her songwriting, including ridiculing "Both Sides Now," chipped away at her confidence and autonomy. Performing mostly as a duo so she couldn't shine alone, Joni was kept in a cage of broken promises and suppressed creativity. Chest pains from the betrayal and loss compounded her previous struggles, as the man she hoped would be her salvation became part of her imprisonment. After less than 2 years, Joni left the marriage and drove alone to New York City, a pivotal moment of reclaiming herself. Though scarred, she found strength in solitude and a renewed dedication to her art. This journey marked the beginning of her rise to legendary status, fueled by heartbreak, turned into timeless music. Even in the darkest moments of her early career, Joni Mitchell's enduring spirit and refusal to be silenced foreshadowed the transformative legacy she would leave. Her ability to translate private pain into universal beauty set her apart and ensured her place in music history. Joni's experience of silent suffering amid emerging fame shows how intertwined her personal tragedy was with her creative journey. It was a delicate balance, one she maintained until the truth could at last be told. The depth of her early struggles would reverberate throughout her music and life, coloring everything that came after. But every ending contained the seed of a new beginning, and Joni's story was far from over. Troubled marriage and betrayal. In early 1965, Joni Mitchell's life took a dramatic and complicated turn when she met Chuck Mitchell. He was nearly a decade older, confident, and already part of the New York folk scene. Their first encounter was fiery. Joni openly criticized him for mangling lyrics to a Bob Dylan song during his set. Instead of taking offense, Chuck admired her spirit, and within 36 hours, he had proposed marriage. 2 months later, they were wed, and Joni saw the marriage as a lifeline, a chance to regain stability and possibly reclaim her daughter, Kelly. But what began as hope soon spiraled into disappointment. The marriage was never rooted in deep love. It was forged out of Joni's desperation and Chuck's promises, most of which dissolved after the wedding. Much to Joni's heartbreak, Chuck focused more on their careers and less on the personal commitments he'd made. Kelly, already hidden in foster care, was ultimately put up for adoption, a devastating loss that Joni bore in silence. The emotional toll of this betrayal ran deep. Chuck didn't just fail to support her, he actively undermined her. When Joni presented her song, Both Sides Now, a piece that would later become iconic, he laughed at it, belittling what she had poured her soul into. This dismissal chipped away at her confidence and left cracks in her sense of self just as her career was starting to bloom. Financial control and artistic suppression further trapped Joni in a cage. Chuck managed their money and insisted they perform as a duo, making sure she remained overshadowed and unable to shine on her own. He rejected Kelly because she was not his child, and he resented Joni's rising stardom outshining his own. Instead of freedom, Joni found herself confined by expectations and broken promises, a prisoner within her own marriage. Joni's spirit, however, refused to be extinguished. After less than 2 years of this painful union, she made the courageous decision to leave Chuck and set out alone for New York City. That solitary drive marked a turning point, signaling the start of her reclaiming both her life and her music. Though her scars from the relationship lingered, they became part of the raw honesty that would define her artistry. The end of her marriage wasn't just some breakup. It was like a painful shedding of a destructive chapter. And yeah, it hurt. The wounds Chuck inflicted fed into the emotional depth in her songwriting. Somehow her pain turned into powerful ways of showing vulnerability and also strength. That painful freedom let her slip into new creative corners. She could breathe. Even with all that bitterness in the air, Joni didn't really give up on what she wanted. Alone in New York, she suddenly felt tucked among artists and visionaries, people who helped her stretch and grow. The city's creative energy lit up something again inside her, like a new spark, and it sort of set her up for the remarkable journey ahead. Leaving Chuck didn't erase the past, but it gave Joni Mitchell room to mend herself and to evolve. Her music took heartbreak and reshaped it into universal stories, the kind that really landed with audiences. And that felt like the first step toward becoming the legendary artist the world would later know and admire. Her experience with betrayal and control laid bare the messy complexities behind her rise. It was proof of resilience, that stubborn, indomitable power of artistic truth. It was a painful release, you know, the one she needed for the next chapter of her life to finally unfold. From deep personal trials arose a bold new beginning, one marked by a sudden and life-changing encounter in a small Florida folk club, an introduction that would alter Joni's path forever. Artistic breakthrough and rising fame. In 1967, after the end of her difficult marriage, Joni Mitchell's career took a life-changing turn. While performing at the Gaslight in Coconut Grove, Florida, she caught the attention of David Crosby, who had recently left the Byrds. Crosby was captivated by her songwriting and unforgettable voice, later describing the experience as overwhelming. Their meeting marked the beginning of a partnership that would help launch Joni into the spotlight. Crosby encouraged Joni to move to California, where he helped her sign with Reprise Records and produced her debut album, Song to a Seagull, released in March 1968. Wanting to preserve the intimacy of her performances, he experimented with recording techniques, including having Joni sing into the open lid of a grand piano to create a natural echo. The result was a warm, personal sound that introduced audiences to her unique artistry. Even before releasing her own albums, Joni had already earned recognition as an exceptional songwriter. Judy Collins turned Both Sides Now into a major hit in 1967, reaching the top 10 in both the United States and the United Kingdom. Collins also recorded Chelsea Morning, while artists such as Tom Rush and Fairport Convention covered Joni's music, spreading her reputation across the folk world. Her breakthrough as a recording artist came with Clouds, released on May 1, 1969. The album climbed into the Billboard 200 and featured memorable songs like Both Sides Now and Chelsea Morning. Combining deeply personal lyrics with inventive melodies, it showcased Joni's growing confidence as both a writer and performer. That success was recognized at the 1970 Grammy Awards, where Clouds won Best Folk Performance. The award confirmed that Joni was no longer simply a gifted songwriter behind the scenes. She had become one of the leading voices in contemporary music. Just months later, she raised the bar again with Ladies of the Canyon. Released in April 1970, the album became one of her defining works, earning platinum certification and producing timeless classics including Big Yellow Taxi, Woodstock, and The Circle Game. Blending folk, pop, and rock, the record expanded her audience while preserving the deeply personal storytelling that defined her style. During this period, Joni settled in Laurel Canyon, the creative center of California's music scene. Surrounded by artists such as Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, she became part of a remarkable community of musicians who inspired one another through collaboration and friendship. The atmosphere fueled her creativity and helped shape the sound of an entire generation. By the early 1970s, Joni Mitchell had transformed from an unknown Canadian singer into one of the most respected artists in music. With every album, she pushed beyond expectations, proving that emotional honesty and fearless creativity could redefine popular music. Her rise was only the beginning of a career that would continue to influence generations of musicians around the world. Every breakthrough, every success, was built on her willingness to confront personal pain and to channel it into music that spoke to the heart. The trials of her past gave her songs an enduring honesty that continues to resonate across generations. The evolution of her sound and vision. As Joni Mitchell entered the 1970s, she refused to stay confined to folk music. Instead, she explored jazz, pop, and experimental sounds, proving she was more interested in artistic growth than commercial expectations. While the change surprised some longtime fans, critics praised her fearless creativity, and her reputation as one of music's boldest innovators only grew stronger. That transformation reached a milestone with Court and Spark in 1974. The album blended sophisticated jazz influences with memorable melodies, becoming her biggest commercial success. It climbed to number 2 on the US charts and topped the charts in Canada. Its biggest single, Help Me, reached number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100, giving Joni her only US top 10 hit. Songs like Free Man in Paris reflected her own experiences in the music business while showcasing a richer, more complex musical style. Around this time, Joni's voice also changed. The bright mezzo-soprano that defined her early recordings gradually became deeper and huskier. While many assumed smoking caused the shift, Joni pointed to vocal nodules, lingering effects of childhood polio, a compressed larynx, and natural aging. Rather than fighting the change, she embraced it, using her lower voice to add greater depth and emotion to her music. Her creative curiosity sort of pushed her into groundbreaking collaborations, especially with legendary bassist Jaco Pastorius. His expressive, fretless bass showed up as a defining part on albums like Hejira, Don Juan's Reckless Daughter, and Mingus. That odd little approach of his brought fresh texture and feeling into Joni's songs, and it helped her go even further away from the usual traditional folk lane. In 1979, she accepted yet another bold challenge by working with jazz icon Charles Mingus, who was dealing with a terminal illness. Together, they shaped the album Mingus, mixing his intricate jazz ideas with her own poetic songwriting. Even though Mingus died before the album was actually released, the whole thing still counts as one of the most ambitious projects from her career. And it really showed how ready she was to gamble artistically. Joni also made it very clear she wanted to steer her own creative direction. She ended up producing many of her own albums, kinda rare for women in the music industry back then, and she painted a lot of her album covers herself. For her, music and visual art were inseparable. One fed the other, in a way. The albums from that stretch leaned into themes of travel, identity, love, and self-discovery. Stuff like Hejira pointed to a more reflective, emotionally layered songwriter, and it pulled listeners into deeply personal accounts about freedom, loneliness, and change. And all of that without trying to smooth it out. By the 1980s, Joni Mitchell was already beyond her folk beginnings. Her constant reinvention, her emotional honesty, and that refusal to chase trends ended up influencing whole generations of artists. She wasn't only a musician anymore, she became a creative pioneer whose work keeps tugging at people's imagination, proving that real artistry comes from embracing change, not fearing it. Behind the music's innovation lay a woman battling health crises and personal demons, soon to reveal the deepest layers of her story. Personal battles and public revelation. Joni Mitchell's greatest battles happened far from the spotlight. In her 40s, she began suffering from a mysterious condition she identified as Morgellons disease. She described painful itching, extreme fatigue, skin sores, and strange colored fibers emerging from her skin. The illness remains controversial, with some doctors questioning the diagnosis, while many patients insist their symptoms are real. Whatever its cause, the condition dramatically changed Joni's life. The illness left her physically and emotionally drained. For nearly 7 years, she spent much of her time indoors, unable to tour or perform. Everyday activities became exhausting, and the disbelief she encountered from some medical professionals only deepened her isolation. One of music's brightest stars suddenly found herself fighting an invisible battle few people understood. Then, in 2015, disaster struck again when Joni suffered a brain aneurysm at her home. The medical emergency left her unable to walk, speak, or care for herself. She later compared the experience to starting life over, saying she had to relearn basic skills, including how to play guitar and sing. Her recovery demanded years of determination. Through intensive therapy, she slowly regained her abilities, even studying old recordings of herself to rebuild her musical skills. Considering the severity of her condition, many described her progress as extraordinary. By 2017, more than 2 years after the aneurysm, Joni made this sort of surprise appearance at Clive Davis's pre-Grammy party, and well, fans got a little hope that she was slowly mending. The real win, though, came in 2022, when she climbed back on stage at the Newport Folk Festival. At 78, she sang beloved staples like Big Yellow Taxi and Both Sides Now, and it really moved people across the planet, like an emotional return that many folks figured wouldn't really happen. After that, recognition followed pretty quickly, including the Kennedy Center Honors in 2021, plus appearances at big moments like the Grammy Awards and different benefit concerts. Each set of songs felt like it was celebrating not just her music, but also her stubborn resilience, you could say. Joni Mitchell's journey is more than the headline part of fame. It's the story of a woman who ran into illness, loss, and this overwhelming wall of adversity, yet still refused to stop. Her persistence turned personal hardship into something that lasts as inspiration, showing that even after life's bleakest periods, hope and creativity can stick around and continue. Her personal battles shaped not only her music, but also the way the world understands perseverance through art and adversity. Legacy and triumph. Joni Mitchell's legacy reaches far beyond music. After years of keeping her deepest heartbreaks private, she eventually revealed the pain behind many of her songs, showing how personal tragedy shaped her remarkable artistry. Her honest songwriting and unwavering authenticity continue to inspire listeners around the world. Her return to the spotlight became one of the greatest comeback stories in modern music. In 2017, more than 2 years after suffering a brain aneurysm, Joni surprised audiences with an appearance at Clive Davis's pre-Grammy party. Then, in 2022, she made an unforgettable return to live performance at the Newport Folk Festival, singing classics like Big Yellow Taxi and Both Sides Now. At 78, she proved that neither illness nor time could silence her voice. Fans and critics sort of celebrated her comeback with this overwhelming emotion. Like instantly, you could feel it. Videos of the performance quickly spread online, kinda introducing her music to a new generation too, while also reminding longtime admirers why she still remains one of history's greatest singer-songwriters. Honors like the Kennedy Center recognition and then later Grammy appearances just cemented her lasting influence even more. Joni's journey through illness, personal loss, and creative triumph became this powerful kind of symbol of resilience. Whether she was overcoming serious health challenges or turning painful experiences into timeless songs, she showed that vulnerability can turn into real strength, and her fearless honesty opened doors for singer-songwriters across the years, especially women, showing that authenticity could redefine an entire industry. Today, classics like A Case of You and Both Sides Now keep touching millions. Her music, her paintings, and that enduring spirit still act like a testament to the healing power of creativity. In the end, Joni Mitchell's story is really about survival, courage, and artistic brilliance, making sure she stays one of the most influential and beloved voices in music history. Joni Mitchell's story reveals the strength found in vulnerability and the healing power of finally sharing the truth. From private heartbreak to worldwide acclaim, her music remains a timeless symbol of resilience and courage. If this journey inspired you, like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories. Then, keep watching by selecting the next remarkable story appearing on your screen now.